First step, I think, to preparing yourself to teaching online is deciding which platform, which tool you want to use. Maybe some of you work with a school and they kind of have put that on you. They've forced upon you which tool that you are using. But if you have the choice, right now we're going to go through a quick pros and cons list of these three tools. I know there are more, but just to save time, these are basically what I think are the three most popular tools for you to use if you want to do some teaching online. So let's start with Skype. Skype is actually free for up to 50 people. You can have up to 50 people in a call. Um, and it works well on all devices, phones, computers, tablets. You've got a chat box and you can share screens. So that's really good. There's a YouTube link here. And what I'm going to try to do during the Q&A is I'm going to make this presentation into a PDF and I'm going to share it with you in the chat box. Uh, Also, Colin, since we're talking about this now, if you could ask everyone in the chat to put their name, and if you want to send your email privately, you can send your email privately to me, the host, and we can share all this information with you. Also, it'd be really fun if everyone could share their city and country, and maybe we'll put together some kind of a fun little map after this presentation. The cons of Skype. I'm getting back to my presentation now. Sorry about that. Sometimes the video quality can be glitchy, and maybe you have a little bit of limited control if you're teaching a large amount of people and you can't mute other people's microphones. So maybe there's a little bit less control than some of the other applications. Microsoft Teams. For me, there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with Microsoft Teams. It's free. You can actually have up to 250 people in a call. It's massive. Works on all devices. I tested it out on my phone the other day. Looked actually pretty nice on my phone. You can have chat. You can have screen sharing. You can actually have live automated captions. I was trying to figure that out. This is my project next week, but I know some colleagues who actually have been able to do that. I was in a call with a colleague and she activated the live captions, and as we were speaking, subtitles came up automatically. It was really impressive and it worked pretty accurately, I have to say. So I have a student with some hearing impairment, and this is something that I have to keep in mind for students with disabilities. Collaborative functions, you can actually go into a shared Microsoft Word document, a shared Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and you can see everybody working simultaneously, much like a Google Doc. You have file sharing, you have some space, much like you would with a cloud, and you can actually record sessions too. The cons, again, I think there's more, there's some limited control. Um, I'm trying to stay away from Microsoft Teams with my groups when I have groups of 30 or 40 students, because we discovered that the students can actually have control to mute the teacher's microphone if they wanted to. Uh, and I prefer not to have that happen with the types of students that I have, where I would prefer to have more control over everyone's microphones. The interface can be sometimes confusing. Sometimes when you can actually have breakout rooms. I didn't put that in the pros, but you can. But whenever you organize breakout rooms in different channels on Microsoft Teams, for me, it kind of felt like Inception, like a meeting within a meeting within a meeting. It got kind of confusing, even for me, and I think I'm actually kind of comfortable with technology. So, but with a little bit of practice, it's not so bad. Then Zoom, this is what we're using now. There's a free version, and then there are pro versions where you have to pay a little bit more. With the free version, you have unlimited time, but only for 3 people. If you have more than 3 people, then there's a 40-minute time limit. There is actually right now, because of the coronavirus situation, you can request to have that time limit lifted. There's an application on their website. You just have to say that you work for a school that is being affected by the coronavirus. I put in an application for TESOL France, actually, to try to do this website, do this webinar with an upgraded account, but I'm actually using my work account right now. They didn't get back to me, but maybe they're being flooded with requests. Zoom also works on all devices, phones, computers, any device. There's chat, and actually we can have more control over chats. You can choose to have no chat if you don't want anyone to chat. You can choose for the students to only chat with the host or the teacher per se. You can choose for everyone to chat with everyone and see everything if they want, as you're doing right now. You can choose to also let the students chat privately if you want with one another. And one thing that's interesting about that is you should probably let the students know that even though like for example, if I activated that now and you decided to chat with someone else privately, as soon as I save the chat, because you can save the text of the chat, you can still see what's happening in the private messages with the different participants. File sharing in the chat box. So I'm going to do this with you later on. I'm just going to drag and drop a PDF of my presentation into the chat box, and you can just directly see the file that I want to share. Screen sharing, as you can see now. Full control over users, microphones, cameras. So if I'm muting your microphone and camera, you can't undo that. Only the host can do it. But also you can give that control to the users if you want. Right now, just to kind of manage this webinar for the first part, just for the presentation, I decided it might be easier just to mute everyone and to turn off cameras. But later on during the Q&A, we'll open that up. Raise your hand option. If you guys can see, if you have clicked on the button at the bottom of your screen, participants button, normally a participants window should pop up, or you can see it on the right-hand side of your screen. And there's a raise your hand option. And if you guys want to play around with that, you can just raise your hand and click on that button. And this is interesting for the presenter, because if you've muted the microphones, someone might want to raise their hand, and then you can just unmute their microphone and answer the question. And if you're doing that now, I'm not going to answer your question yet. So we'll do that later. You can draw on the screen. You can annotate. Here we go. Colin, if you hear me, can you see what I'm drawing? Hold on, I'm going to draw a
I
line.
see a
right
little
now.
red star moving. Now
Can
there's
you
a
draw?
pen.
Yeah, I just drew a nice little line. I actually like this little red star. It helps the users follow where my mouse is. This is another advantage I didn't put in my list, but you don't have this in the other tools. And I feel like if you're going to do a lot of screen sharing, this helps draw the participant's eye towards the mouse. Because if you say, do you see my mouse? Do you see where I'm clicking? Do you see where I am? Sometimes it's not so easy just to see the plain mouse without the dot. But with it, you can see it much better. You can see where my mouse is all over the screen. Like if I'm next to this link right here, that really helps bring your eye over there. Breakout rooms. You can have up to 50 breakout rooms. Also, just to let you know, with Zoom, you can have up to 300 participants. So actually right now, if I wanted to, I could put everybody in a breakout room. You can have the program do it automatically and randomly and choose the groups randomly, or you can select the different people you want to have in each breakout room and the number of rooms that you want to have. And you can record sessions, and we're doing that right now, and we'll share that with you after today's session. Cons, I didn't find too many. If you do think there are some cons, go ahead and type that in the chat window. But for me, maybe it's the interface could be a bit less intuitive. Well, the screen sharing, if we compare Microsoft Teams to Zoom, I do think screen sharing is maybe a little bit less intuitive than Microsoft Teams from my experience. Okay, let's move on and let's talk about, well, you see, let me try to get rid of that. Okay, I got rid of my little drawing. Okay. Um, what you should do before, during, and after uh, for preparing for a presentation. We can see all my little red squiggly lines. That's because I didn't go full screen, so I apologize for that. Let me, you know what? Let's take Colin. I'm gonna go full screen. All right, gonna go all the way
Okay.
back up. Is that all right?
We see before, during, after.
All right, all right, and it's full screen now.
Yeah.
Okay, it's better. That way you don't see my squiggly lines because Microsoft PowerPoint, I think my version's in French and it's not recognizing those words in English. Okay. What you should do before, during, and after to prepare yourself for an online lesson. So a little checklist here. Let me get rid of that. You should definitely get your equipment and workspace ready. Maybe this goes without saying, but I think it really helps to have a little checklist. Check your video, check your sound. Also, lighting. Maybe you want to move some lamps around. If it's dark in your room, you want to kind of get some extra lighting so that people see you more clearly. What background do the others see? My TESOL France colleague Kate was saying that yesterday she had an online lesson and it looked like one of her students had some kind of dirty underwear drying over top a radiator. And maybe this isn't just for you, but also for your students, making them aware of what people can actually see in the background. For me, it's pretty plain. If I move to the side, maybe you see a picture. And then having some stuff in the background can also be a talking point for your lessons. And that could be interesting if you kind of want to bring in some realia into your online lesson. Check your camera angle. So if it's, if you're too close or too far away, are you seeing the bottom of someone's chin? Try to square it away so that you see the person's face, uh, yeah, in a nice way on the screen. Uh, are you going to be disturbed by anything in your environment? Any noises? Um, Earlier, there was an ambulance that drove by, but I don't know if you heard that. Maybe because I have a microphone headset, it's really uh, bringing all the sound right into my headset. Sometimes if you have a microphone that's just integrated into your computer, you hear more background sounds. So that's something to think of too. And make sure you're connected to the internet. But there have been some complications with some schools and maybe some people, like maybe you've experienced this already, where your just internet connection has been a bit buggy. Make sure you're plugged in and that you have enough battery too. What else can you do before? Clean up your computer. This is something I have to do. If you see this picture down below, all right, actually, let me get do I have to have this on? Yeah, I have to have that window open, but that's okay. All right. Does your hard drive look like this right now? Mine actually does. It's not that low. That's not a screenshot of my own computer C drive, but if you want your computer to run better, you should definitely clean up your hard drive. Maybe this is a good time for all of us to do that. Turn off all notifications. I should have put an S there. Sorry about that typo. Anything that could pop up, any messages, emails that could pop up and distribute during your lesson, make sure you close that. I closed my Skype just before this call, so something to think about. Close any other extraneous applications you don't need during your lesson. Try to only have open what you need and get that ready before your lesson. So there you go. Oops, sorry about that. What else can you do to get ready beforehand? Well, actually getting practice with the functions, getting comfortable with the chat function, getting comfortable with screen sharing, getting comfortable with an online whiteboard. Are you going to use something like BitPaper, Microsoft Word, or just have a piece of paper on the side? Are you going to just write some stuff and show people on the screen? So I'll do that for you guys right now. Just a nice little smiley. I don't know what else to write to you, so sorry. And try to practice with a colleague beforehand. I created that Google Doc, but we're actually we decided not to use that Google Doc anymore. We're going to use a Google Form because we thought that maybe it's not the best for everyone to see everyone's email address. So we're going to try to organize that in a different way. So we're going to share a Google Form with you. And so I'm gonna, I'll close that Google Doc. So don't go to that link. You probably can't copy and paste it right now anyway. But we'd like to set up a buddy system. If you don't have anyone to practice with, this Google form, if you want to fill it in with your email and some details, we'll try to set you up with a partner to practice using this technology if you haven't done that before. Because really, the best way to get ready is to practice with a friend, a colleague, or even family members. You know, get everything ready, do a practice lesson. So that's actually the best thing you can do. During, maybe you can think of this before, but at the start of your lesson, you should, explain what you expect from your students in terms of classroom management online. It's a little bit different than classroom management in a physical classroom. So think of how you want people to behave in your online environment. Do you want students to just have their microphones on and just speak whenever they want? It depends on how many students you have. Do you want people to just type in the chat window while you're speaking, kind of like now for this presentation? Is there a raise the hand button? Are you going to use that? I have a colleague who actually has some seeing disabilities. He doesn't see very well, and he decided to just turn all video off, and it was almost like a conference call where people were just listening to each other. And it seems like during these times, everyone's being very respectful, and students are just listening and being patient and being polite. So my colleague actually, who considers himself a Luddite and hates technology, was able to do it yesterday, and made me feel really good to hear that his lessons went well online. And for him, he was basically just using the sound during the whole lesson because he's kind of limited in what he can do because of his sight disability. Oh, I see some people who are drawing. So, yeah, some people can actually draw on this. I'm going to try to erase that. So this is something that you can also disable in the options for Zoom. So please do not draw. I'm going to, in your options, in the settings on the Zoom website, you can choose to completely disable that. I didn't do that because I wanted to demonstrate that. But once you enable it, yeah, thank you. Please do not draw on the screen. If that continues, I might have to just go into my settings and disable that. So I would appreciate it if you guys didn't draw on the screen. Thank you. So yeah, that's something to consider as well. I activated it to show you that function, but maybe you want to go into your settings and actually deactivate. In French, it's called annoter. It's the annotation. I'm not exactly sure what it's called in the English version of Zoom, but you can find that in your settings. So that was actually a good demonstration. Actually, you should know about that. During. Something to consider. You should think of what icebreakers and warmers you want to do. Brain breaks. This means you should probably take breaks more often than maybe you would in a physical lesson, in a face-to-face lesson, because maybe we're getting tired of just always sitting and being behind a screen. Maybe you want to get your students up and moving and to actually walk around while they're listening to you give your lesson. Um, take more breaks. Use maybe some mindfulness activities, some visualizations, some music. I put on some music in the background while people were logging in. I think this is something I'm going to do with my students as well for my online lessons. And maybe even just have the sound of the beach and some waves in the background. I think we all need a little bit of mindfulness and some best practices in well-being here. Okay. Some things to consider during your lesson. Yeah, don't overdo it. Take some breaks. Uh, I would say even every half an hour, take a break. That's my personal recommendation. But I know a lot of people. There's a lot of different literature on that. Is it every 15 minutes, half an hour, 45? Maybe it depends on the activities you're doing with your students. Before and after, I think, so this is before and after. You might want to explain where students can find resources for your lesson. Are you going to email them a PDF? Are you going to email them the resources that they need during the lesson? Are you going to use some other platform? Here are some other platforms that you can use. There's Padlet, uh, Test Teach or Blend Space, Edmodo, Pearl Trees, Moodle, or I should have put this in my presentation, but maybe you just want to use some cloud sharing, Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive. This could be a very simple and practical way for you to share resources and materials with your students. So think about how you want to share resources both before and after your lessons electronically. Some links. Again, I will share the PDF with you guys. That way you can actually click on the links. Tutorials on how to use Skype for online teaching, tutorials for Microsoft Teams, Zoom. FutureLearn has a really great online course for teaching English online. You should definitely go and do that. It's a really great course. Here's a tutorial on how to use BitPaper, the online whiteboard, if you don't want to use just paper and Microsoft Word. Some great tutorials. Just do a search in YouTube. You can find lots of stuff. If you type in teaching English online, there are lots of resources. Practical tools, again, the virtual whiteboard, Padlet, Blend Space and Test Teach, ThingLink, some other classic tools maybe you've heard of already. If not, these are great online tools that you can use to do quizzes and vocabulary revision. I use Socrative, Quizlet, and Quizzes a lot, and I'm going to be demonstrating some of that this afternoon in the Fun and Games webinar. Other resources, live worksheets. These are actually worksheets that you can use directly on a website, and you can kind of either send the students there, or you can do them with the students by sharing your screen. Lots of good websites where you can actually do stuff online. The questions game, it's actually an online board game with conversation questions, and there's a virtual die. You roll the die, and you advance a certain number of spaces, and it's a fun interactive game online. And the last one, Pobble 365, is great for writing. There's a picture, and then there's the beginning of a story, and it asks you to finish the story. And in addition to that, there are lots of writing prompts, and there's one for every day of the year. It's a great website. I definitely recommend it. So where am I on timing? That's basically the end of my presentation. And now we're going to open it up for questions. And